Okay. So, as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about getting proactive with Parkinson's disease. I want to talk to you guys today. I am obviously very, very passionate about exercise. That is my forte. That is what I am very, very passionate about. I've been working with people with Parkinson's disease and with exercise for the past 15 years, 16 years now. So when I first started my career, the only exercise program that was out there was physical therapy, LSVT big. I'm sure many of you have done that practice before. It is highly repetitive, and it wasn't too exciting at the time. But I feel very blessed and fortunate to having kind of come up in my career in a time where exercise, the research on exercise and Parkinson's has just exploded. And there's so much good information out there now on what to do, how to do it. That's why I'm really passionate about what we do here at Movement Revolution. Um, but I wanted to talk today about exercise is one component of living well with Parkinson's disease. There are many other factors that come into your total health and wellness, and how can we can optimize your total health and wellness outside of just outside of just exercise. So we're going to be talking about obviously exercise, diet, sleep, so some nutrition information, sleep, and how that affects everything, and then how can we leverage some technology that's been, I think that's the new wave of helping us, one, monitor the progression of Parkinson's disease, identify what you need to do from a sleep, diet, and exercise perspective. And I think, a lot of the technology that's currently out there is just kind of in its infancy. So I'm excited to see where that goes. And I'll kind of tell you a little bit more about how we're utilizing it and how we hope to utilize it here a little bit more in the future. But let me see if I can advance my slides here. That change for you guys?
Yeah, it's the next slide.
Perfect. Thank you. I just want to make sure it's coming through the same way on your end. So, we kind of coined what we do is neuro-intensive exercise. And so, what that means is we want to take all the research that's been done over the past 15 years, thousands of research articles, and how do we apply that, clinical setting where it's very controlled, like we just talked about before. In these clinical trials, you have your control group, you have your intervention group, and you have, maybe a placebo group. But what do we do with that exercise? It's one thing to do it in a clinical setting where it's, you know, very isolated in a very specific protocol. But the reality is that's not real life. And so what we're really passionate about is how do we take all that research that's done in a clinical setting and apply it to real life scenarios. So we take traditional exercise methods and blend them all together to make sure we're taking into consideration your fluctuating symptoms, your goals, activity level, you know, plans, family situations, living scenarios, and how does that all affect how you move? And that affects how we prescribe exercise. So that's kind of what we do with our approach to exercise and how we approach each and every person's program design. And I know there's one person here that's going to be assessed tomorrow. You'll identify that with once you see Austin and how we approach this from the very ground level. We want to make sure we're adapting whatever you need to focus on the most, and your program should reflect that. So, um, but I wanted to start just by this slide will come up again, but these are all the different factors that I wanted to talk about tonight. So, how do we build this neuroprotective wellness continuum? You are in the center of this, but these are all the different aspects that relate to optimizing your health, your brain health, and give you the most control over the progression and the symptom management of your Parkinson's disease. A lot of this is in our control. Some of it isn't, but a lot of it is. And if you can take even small baby steps toward implementing something new after the presentation tonight, I think you're going to feel a lot better. And this kind of comes from, so early on in our history with movement and exercise in general. We were so focused on exercise. The more people I see year after year, we've had clients now that have been with us for 12 years, and some amazing stories that some people changing one aspect of getting better sleep or significantly changing their diet, and boom, their symptoms change significantly when their exercise routine hasn't changed at all. So again, it's not just one component. We want to optimize all of these things that are within our control to be as neuroprotective as possible. So we'll obviously talk about exercise. We're going to talk about sleep management, diet. I want to also bring up your clinical care team, your OTs like Christina, your physical therapist, your occupational, speech therapy. All of them have a place within your wellness continuum, right? If you have an achy shoulder or a bad back, we're going to want to make sure that you go see a physical therapist to address those pain levels, that discomfort, so it doesn't become a more nagging issue, preventing you from moving less. We want to keep you moving as best as possible. So we want to kind of identify where are the biggest impacts of your day-to-day life and your pain and your ability level, and what things can we do to help optimize those. So when you are talking to your clinicians, it's great to have an optimal medication dosage if you're currently on medication. If you're more newly diagnosed and you're not, that's great. You want to kind of, delay that starting a medication as much as you can, as much as you feel comfortable. And that's where having a good active conversation with your movement disorder specialist can kind of guide you down a path to identify what's your optimal dosage, what's the optimal medication kind of cocktail that you should be taking, given how you respond to it. Everyone's a little bit different. So establishing a care team around you that listens to your symptoms, that listens to kind of the feedback that you're giving them is really important. And this group here, so we have exercise, sleep, diet, clinical teams, and then social support and engagement. That's what this group is all about. That's what our Rock City boxing groups are all about. That's what Movement Revolution is all about. We want to have a home for people where you feel comfortable asking questions to other people in similar situations, having a social outlet, and we make you work hard. So, but that socialization component and having someone to talk to, a sounding board, is really, really important as well. So, hot off the presses, exercise is good for you. Eating clean is good for you. And getting enough sleep is good for you. We know all these things, right? This is not new news. But why? So I wanted to start by kind of going over it and getting kind of nerdy, and I don't want to get too far into it because one, I'm not a researcher, I'm not a doctor, but I think it's really important to know why is it important to do those things. We know that we need to eat better, sleep more, drink more water, get more exercise, but I just wanted to go through what happens in your body to make this important. So let's get cellular. Ideally what we want to do is optimize your cellular health. Ideally, we think so much because Parkinson's disease is a neurological condition. We think a lot about our neurons. Oh, now it's animating. It's moving. There we go. But how can we optimize the health of those neurons? How can we optimize the ability for your cells to function properly? So if any of you have a more medical background, you may know what a mitochondria is. It's a very important part of each cell that we have in our bodies. It's our powerhouse. So these mitochondria need us to make good decisions about the food that we take in, the sleep that we get, the exercise that we do, because this is the energy powerhouse of our whole body, of every cell in our body. So it's important we want to keep these cells as healthy as possible. It makes this thing called ATP, which is what your body used to break down glucose and utilize it as energy. And it's essential to maintain the cellular function and survival of each and every cell. So what it does is it produces this energy and it uses oxygen for cellular respiration. So it helps pull the oxygen out of our blood, utilize it, and have the cells function at a normal level. I'll explain why that's important in a minute. It also helps regulate the metabolic activity level of our cells. The glucose. How do we optimize glucose? How do we utilize it as it's coming into our body? And then most importantly, when we're talking about neurological and brain health, it supports the synaptic function and the plasticity of our neurons. So we want those neurons to be firing as strong as possible, getting as much synaptic activity as we possibly can. So maintaining the health of our mitochondria is really Really important. Now, what causes our mitochondria to be stressed? Have you guys ever heard of oxidative stress? Right? It's the stress that we take into our bodies from a variety of different things. It could be due to a lack of sleep. It could be due to being overweight. It could be due to lack of physical activity or excess nutrients like processed foods. Um, the getting into the physiology of exercise from a cellular level is something that the research and the technology has come so far at explaining why it's really, really important. If you want to get really nerdy about it, I have a podcast I'm more than happy to send you, and you can listen to a researcher from Stanford talk about it for 2 hours. It is fascinating, and it's so important to be able to understand the basics of this and why it's important to exercise. But if you think about it, when we get stress from all these different areas, lack of physical activity, lack of sleep, it puts stress on our bodies and it puts stress on our cells. And so that's why I wanted to talk about this because it's so important that the reason why we want to move more, eat better, sleep a little bit more better, a little bit better is because it helps reduce the oxidative stress in our bodies and allows our cells to function better. Um, so other factors that can cause stress on our cells or our mitochondria in particular, aging. As we age, there's just more proteins that can accumulate over time. Environmental factors such as chemical exposures, pollutants, alcohol consumption, can cause some damage to those cells as well. So again, some of these things are in our control, some of them are not. But we just want to be aware it's not necessarily just because we need to eat better or sleep more, but it's all about keeping your cells in your body healthy so they can work better for us. Um, when we do get some dysfunction in these mitochondria, it can cause genetic mutations like gamma-synuclein, LRRK2. If any of you have been to a lot of educational presentations on the Parkinson's disease, there's a lot of research looking at these genetic proteins and how it might be affecting the origins of Parkinson's disease. But on top of that, when we don't fuel our bodies with the right things, in these mitochondrial cells have dysfunction, it can cause some muscle weakness, it can increase fatigue, it can impact hearing loss and vision. It can affect appetite and gastrointestinal function as well. So it's so important to figure out it's what you're doing with your exercise, what you're putting into your body has a direct effect on the cells, which help your neurons function better. So I just want to kind of cover that because I don't think it's talked about necessarily enough. But the other thing I wanted to talk about is, let's see if it's going to work. There we go. Inflammation. So when we talked about that oxidative stress in the previous slides, cellular function, there's been a lot of research coming in on Parkinson's disease in particular to say, how much of a role does inflammation have in the progression of Parkinson's disease and the onset of Parkinsonian symptoms. So it's important to note what can increase inflammation, what can decrease inflammation. So when we think about things that can increase inflammation, it's everything we already talked about. Stress, high sugar intake, lack of sleep, poor diet, stress and anxiety. When we look at things that can kind of reduce inflammation, all the things that we're going to talk about today, exercise, eating well, mindfulness and breath work, yoga, all these different things. And ideally, we want to reduce the inflammatory response within our body, which makes our cells happier and healthier, so it can make us stronger and it can combat any cellular dysfunction leading to a progression of Parkinson's. Oh, jumped ahead. So when we're talking about cellular function and brain health and these neurons, have you guys heard of neuroplasticity before? Right?
I have.
Yeah. So what is neuroplasticity? It is our brain and our body's ability to adapt and change. Now, this adaptation and change can be for the better. It can also be detrimental. So if what it does is your brain has a very keen ability to respond to recurring scenarios. So I'm going to slip past this slide because it's distracting. But if we feed our body with a lot of negative information, if we're chronically stressed or we are chronically seeking sugar or we're chronically seeking exercise, your body has a different response and your brain has a different response to all of those different things. So it's actually been shown through some research that if we have a lot of negative stimulus within your brain, be it high stress, high anxiety, depression, those neurons and the synapses in your brain and the neurons can multiply and become very, very strong. But we have the same ability when it comes to exercise, right? When your body, if maybe we have less of an arm swing on that right side, well, LSVT Big says we need to do those arm swing movements, those really big dynamic movements, very repeatedly at high intensity for a significant amount of time. And that's what neuroplasticity does. If we do those movements, it can kind of combat what a normal neural pattern is with an arm swing. It's saying, oh, no, I can do this. This is how it's supposed to feel. And you overstimulate it and it makes it change. So that's your brain's ability to adapt and change. Great book if you want to get nerdy with it. The Brain's Way of Healing. It came out many, many years ago, but kind of one of the first big books on explaining kind of the role of neuroplasticity in brain health. But um, there's going to be a theme today, but we can enhance neuroplasticity with intense exercise, stress reduction, sleep, and new skill acquisition. So we'll talk about that here in a minute as well. But how do we know what to do and where to start if there's so much to do? I think, one of the things that I don't want you guys to take this away from is, oh my God, I know I can't sleep that well. My diet could be quite a bit better. I'm exercising, but I'm exercising right. There's so much to focus on and think about. But I think hopefully you can kind of compartmentalize what you do and what you need to focus on first. And that's our goal for today. And that's our goal as your neuro exercise specialist to help you identify, hey, that sleep is really affecting how you move. So let's talk to a sleep specialist and get on top of that as best we can. So we're going to go through all of these different focuses again and kind of talk about each one with a little more detail. So the first thing I wanted to go over is diet. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it because it's relatively straightforward in that it's very complicated. No, but in general, I put eat with purpose on here. I think we've heard a lot about Mediterranean diet, the MIND diet. Both have been studied in Parkinson's disease. Both have been studied to reduce inflammation. One of the primary reasons why is because those diets are high in fruits and vegetables, which are typically high in antioxidants, spinach and berries, nuts. They're also high in omega-3 fatty acids. All of these things make our cells very, very happy. It fills our body with natural nutrients, not from a supplement, but the natural nutrients that your cells need to function properly. This type of a diet also provides you is a lack of highly processed foods. I'd say if you're going to do one thing when it comes to your diet, try to minimize your processed foods. They're full of chemicals. They're full of emulsifiers and sugars and glucose and fructose that is really, really bad for our cells. And our bodies truly don't know how to process it. I've seen some amazing impacts of how even minor changes in diet, specifically limiting processed foods and increasing organic fruits and vegetables and lowering sugar intake makes a tremendous impact in stress and sleep in particular. I think one of the biggest things I've noticed from our clients that have kind of really taken a deep dive into what they're eating, their sleep gets better, their pain is much, much less. And I think a big reason for that is when you have these organic fruits and vegetables and these, lower sugar content, your body knows how to process these things. And a lot of times when we're oversaturating our body with too much sugar or too many processed foods, our cells don't know what to do with it, so they freak out. Oxidative stress happens and it causes pain, joint swelling. Had a client with a very severe shoulder ache for over a year. Went on a very basic diet, very strict Mediterranean diet for a month. His pain has nearly gone away. Not to say that's going to work for everyone, but being mindful of why you should eat well. Um, I would say, aside from exercise, if you can optimize what you eat, that will, one, improve your ability to exercise and improve your ability to sleep. So if you can kind of get on top of what you're eating, I think that's really important. Um, if you're going to take in carbs, if you're not too familiar, the glycemic index is how, like, what essentially what the glucose and sugar content is for certain starches. So white bread, very high in the glycemic index level. It's very high in sugar, quickly to process. So your body burns through it very, very quickly and can't use it as stored energy. Whereas if you eat, whole grain breads or whole grain rices and things of that nature, they're what they call low glycemic index foods, and your body has the ability to utilize those carbohydrates as you're exercising, as you're going throughout your daily process. So, those of you who know me and have worked with me before, I always say, don't be a dry sponge. So, what I mean by that is if you take a dish sponge, a good old-fashioned one, and you leave it on the counter overnight, you wake up in the morning, you go to pick that sponge up, how easy is it to move? It's not. It's dry, it's stiff, it's rigid, it's tight. But as soon as you fill it up with water, it is easy as can be to move. You can move it any which way you want. It's saturated, it's moving freely. Your muscles are made up of like 90% water. If you can optimize your fluid intake, it helps saturate your muscles, helps them move more freely. People with Parkinson's disease deal with a lot of rigidity and tightness, and that bradykinesia, the slower movements or the limited arm swing, the tremors, those cause your muscles to be really, really tight. So, on top of a stretching routine, just drinking enough water throughout the day is really, really important. I know everyone always says, that makes me pee. I had to get up at night. Try to have it earlier on the day, and just get enough fluid intake. And that's going to vary. I always get the question, how much water should I be drinking? It depends on you. It depends on your body size. So I'd say ask your doctor or talk to a dietitian about any of these things. Whatever movement disorder clinic you're affiliated with, they should have a dietitian on staff who has way more complex breadth of information than I can provide you today. But pay attention to mealtime. I think that's another thing. So when we're talking about your body's ability to regulate glucose and kind of your cells to optimize what you're doing, the timing of your meals matters for two reasons. Medication timing, right? If you're taking up, if you're taking a pill at noon, and that's when you eat lunch, and you have a high protein meal, that protein will absorb that carbolevodopa medication. So you want to make sure that you leave enough spacing. And that's not to say don't eat protein. Your body needs protein. Protein, especially as we get older, is incredibly important for muscular strength and health. Your ability to maintain muscle and build muscle as you get older, it's heavily dependent upon how much protein, how much dietary protein you take in. So don't stop eating meats. Don't stop eating eggs. If you're a vegetarian, you'll find some alternative plant sources for protein. Extremely important, but you have to make sure you're not taking it in around those medication times. Talk to your doctor about that as well. But meal timing also very, very important for sleep. So I've been doing a little bit of experiment on myself, and we'll talk about technology here in a little bit. But when you consume a meal late in the evening, or maybe you're a midnight snacker, or you like to have that little thing, as you're watching a show before you go to bed, it really messes with your glucose levels. And your quality of sleep can be significantly impacted if you have alcoholic beverages, obviously caffeine as well, but meals too close to bedtime. So if you have an activity tracker, which we'll talk about in a little bit, you can really get a good indication of what can impact like what can you have control over when it comes to your sleep. And what you eat certainly has an impact on how well you sleep. Those correlations aren't typically made. So just want to make note of that. Let's talk about sleep and recovery. Sleep and recovery, those go hand in hand. When you go to sleep at night, it gives your brain the ability to sort out all of the information that you take in throughout the day. It helps your body recover and relax from whatever activity you've done throughout the day. So that's why sleep is incredibly important, especially for cognition and memory. It's the time for your brain to kind of resort all of the stimulation you've taken in throughout the day. Sleep also very much helps with you optimize your exercise. And all these things kind of go hand in hand. That's why I like to talk about it because one directly impacts the other. Sleep, diet, exercise. If you sleep better, your body's at more rest. You can optimize your sleep or optimize your exercise the next day, which can be neuroprotective for Parkinson's. If your sleep is a big limiting factor, energy is going to be low, your willingness to exercise is going to be more limited, so on and so forth. So a lack of sleep can also have take a toll on your immune system, your cardiovascular system, stress. So we really want to make sure that we're optimizing this as best we can. I understand Parkinson's disease and the medications associated with it can have a significant impact on sleep. But I highly encourage you, just like I mentioned about the dietitian, seek the consultation from a sleep specialist. I know there's one sleep specialist who's also a movement disorder specialist at Northwestern. He's given presentations to our support group before, one of which is on our YouTube channel. So you can go back and watch that. But really important to talk to specialists and try to see if you can identify what other components of your sleeping habits that may allow you to sleep a little bit better. So it's just some quick tools that hopefully you can take home with you after tonight. It's just when we work with our clients, they say this is like a pre-sleep toolbox. Here are some different things that have been shown in research to help people get to sleep and hopefully improve the quality of sleep that you have each and every night. We'll talk about sleep cycles here in a little bit, but you want to kind of optimize one, the duration of your sleep, but ideally we want to get as much REM and deep sleep as possible. A lot of our clients with Parkinson's will wake up at night to have to go to the bathroom. Some of the medications cause you to wake up in the middle of the night. It's harder to get back to sleep. So, but as much as we can, we want to optimize at least getting to sleep. So here are some different tools that have been shown to be very effective. So what you want to activity before bed is actually very, very good. But it has to be light activity. You don't want to go do a high intensity interval workout right before you go to bed because your body's gonna be all revved up. You're gonna have a lot of adrenaline pumping through your body. It's gonna be very stimulated. That's not gonna be helpful. So you'd want to go for a gentle walk outside when the weather's not -5 degrees out. But maybe it's going on the recumbent bike in your house and just pedaling super slowly, listen to some relaxing music. Get on the floor, get on your bed and stretch. And while you're stretching, do some breath work. These are all things to really help kind of bring our body back down to rest, signal to our brain, it's time to go to sleep. I am relaxing. And that just helps kind of calm down our nervous system to get ready for a sleep cycle. Getting outside, there's a lot of interesting information on light exposure. Right now, I'm staring at two screens that are, and all of you are, have some blue light, which is not great for our sleep. But actually, getting outside, observing dawn and dusk with our eyes, not through a window, but actually outside doing it, has been shown to significantly impact your your circadian rhythm and helps to reset your brain to a more natural sleep cycle. So just getting outside, looking at the sunset and the sunrise, very beautiful and also relaxing and should help with your sleep as well. Again, listening to some relaxing music, limit screens, and light exposure before bed. So we've talked about sleep, we've talked about diet. Now, what I know most about is exercise. So how can we help you move strong and perform better in life and sport at home that allows you to go out to the theater, continue to travel, go out to dinner, continue to play sports, all of those things. That's what we're really passionate about at Movement. And that's what I will spend the majority of the time talking about and answering questions on. But why does it work? It comes back to that neuroplasticity effect. So if you guys have worked with one of our coaches, hopefully you've broken a sweat. Hopefully you've done things that made you uncomfortable. And hopefully you left very, very tired. The reason why is because when your body moves, it signals the cells to activate and the neurons in your brain to activate. It sends that chemical reaction down the little neuron, the action potential, and goes across the synapse to say, you got to move your body. And the strength of that signal is dependent upon the intensity of the movement. So That's why when you go to LSVT big or you go to boxing, that's why boxing is very helpful. It's a very dynamic, high intensity movement pattern. That's why high intensity treadmill training or cycling, the faster, the more load and stress we put on your body, the better the response of your neurons, and it can excite the brain a little bit more. We want that synapse and that release of the neurotransmitters to be as strong as possible. But, but, what do we need to do? Step one, as one of our one here tonight is going to be doing tomorrow, is get assessed. If you haven't been assessed recently, please get reassessed. The reason behind that is we want what I call health triage. What are the biggest impacts of your health that affect your Parkinsonian symptoms, your day-to-day quality of life? And let's identify what those factors are. If it's a lack of exercise, we can help. If it's a lack of sleep, talk to your neurologist. If it's a really poor diet, talk to a dietitian. We want to find out what aspects do we need to address right here, right now, and what action steps do we need to take. But what you do in terms of exercise should reflect what you want to keep doing or get better at. So if getting out of bed in the morning and getting dressed is a really difficult task for you to do, that's right when you get up, and that's not starting. If it's really, really challenging, that's going to start your day off on a kind of a negative note. So how do we design an exercise program with one of our neuro exercise specialists or an OT like Christina to make that portion of your day easier? And there's a lot of exercises that can help with that. It's not just about standing up and down, slamming a ball into the floor and walking all crazy across the gym. There should be some direct correlation between what you do and what it's going to help you with on a day-to-day basis. We want to identify what are the most challenging movements for you to do each and every day. Get out of the car, get your jacket on this time of year, tie your shoelaces. All of those things affect your quality of life. All those things affect how you move each and every day. We want to keep you doing those things because the more you move, the better you move. So we want to identify what are the biggest contributing factors to a lack of movement. And again, how do we keep you doing the things that give you the most quality of life? Traveling, grandkids, golf, all that kind of stuff. So, um, keys to moving strong. All right. So one of the biggest priorities, a lot of the research, and I'm not going to dive too much into the research. I'm sure some of you have heard it. I'm happy to come back and do a deep dive into the thousands of articles done on exercise and Parkinson's, but it's going to depend on what you need to focus on the most. And that's why that assessment is so very important and it changes. For those of you who have been our clients for a while, what you need to work on right now is not going to be what you need to work on 6 months from now. So that's going to ebb and flow. But one of the biggest priorities, no matter where you are in that spectrum, is we got to get your heart rate up. Like I talked about before, we want to induce that neuroplastic effect with exercise. And the research shows that whatever we do, it has to be rigorous and it has to be intense. And the best way to gauge that is assessing your heart rate. So we're looking at what we call a percentage of your percentage of age-related heart rate maximum. So rough calculation is 220 minus your age times 0.75 to 0.85, and that is your target heart rate zone as you are exercising aerobically. And we want to be exercising aerobically at that level 100 to 150 minutes a week, if not more. That's what's been shown to be neuroprotective. In order to do that, like a lot of our clients, especially those more newly diagnosed, what we see a lot is maybe some more rigidity. Maybe your movements have been a little bit slower than you realized. Maybe your loved ones realized it and they said, hey, why are you walking so slow? Or, hey, your arm's not swinging. And what happens when we have that slower or that reduced movement pattern is that muscle and that limb is not going through its normal range of motion. It's limited. So when that happens, it gets very, very tight and rigid. And that's where mobility concerns kind of come into play. So one of the best things I do with all of our clients right out of the gates, what are you doing for active mobility throughout the day? We have to optimize that. And then we have to strengthen your entire body. So we need to look at not just your legs, not just those biceps, not just the the lats to help you open the doors better. But we want to focus on your entire body, how it works together. Because let's face it, when you're traveling, or getting in and out of the car, you need to rotate your torso. You need to flex at your knees and your hips to get yourself out of the car. And then you need to close the door with your arms. So it's life is a whole body movement, right? So we don't want to isolate any particular one, but we want to identify where some of those asymmetries are and identify them and work with them in a unilateral exercise fashion. So we want to work if the left side is weaker than the right because the right side hasn't been affected by the Parkinsonian symptoms, we got to heavily target that left side to kick it into gear a little bit better. And lastly, move dynamically. I think I have like 3 slides here on how important it is to move more dynamically. If it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you. I forget who said that, but it wasn't me. Some DeVito, I think is his last name. Anyway, it wasn't Danny DeVito. I know that. But if it doesn't challenge you, it truly doesn't change you. We need to stimulate your brain enough so that it can make changes. And so what I always tell my clients is you got to get uncomfortable. If I'm not making you uncomfortable with how dynamically you're moving, we're not necessarily making a change in your ability to move better. So to get comfortable being uncomfortable, especially when you're with us and we use things to help keep you safe, like gait belts, and we have body weight harnesses, which sometimes we use. But we want to make sure that we're getting you positioned in a way that it makes you uncomfortable. In order to improve balance, we really have to challenge your balance. Walking over the grass to a concert in the park, you want to make sure that if you hit a little divot in the grass, that your body's gonna respond quickly, and that's a matter of functional balance. So in order to address that, we need to challenge your balance in similar ways in the gym. We need to stress your muscles to lift heavier weights than they're used to lifting, things of that nature. So it can be done systematically. It should be done systematically and progressive over time. If you're just getting started with an exercise routine, we shouldn't be throwing you in to do really massive, heavy sets of weights if you haven't lifted weights in many years, if ever. So we have to build that in a progressive way to make sure that you're starting out and progressing through to make sure you continue to see gains. So if we want to move better, just want to say like this is one version of what dynamic high intensity exercise may look like. So some of you may know some of these folks. Um, Shouting at everyone, but we have a rock steady boxing class here at our Deerfield location. We have someone working on some high dynamic balance on the right hand side here, and we have a boxer over here hitting pretty hard on the mitts. So these are all different ways to work out rigorously. How are we changing the demands of the body in all of these different ways of exercise? It's hand-eye coordination, it's dynamic footwork, it's more stability work in terms of balance. It's cardiovascular exercise. All of these things are different ways that we kind of challenge high dynamic intensity for PD. I think I've duplicated my slides here. No, we're good. So 2 years ago, if you guys have any questions on what to do, one, ask us, but the Parkinson's Foundation did release these recommendations, kind of summarizing all the research on exercise and PD. It's a great resource. It's on the Parkinson's Foundation website. Most of the associations, Michael J. Fox has a resource, APDA has a resource. So this is just the Parkinson's Foundation one that we kind of guide all of our clients through, but it can be daunting. If you did all of the things on this little diagram, it's going to be very time consuming. So we need to figure out again, coming back to that movement triage, what do you need to focus on now? And what should that program look like? You shouldn't be exercising 4 hours a day. 4 hours a week, yes, but not per day. So if you went through this whole thing and did everything on this prescription, it would be 4 hours a day. So you know what you're doing. I'll try to speed this up and then we can get to some questions, get some more specifics from what you guys want to learn. But I did want to cover technology because it is, I think, one of the most insightful tools that we are going to be start using a little bit more at Movement, that we've been utilizing a little bit in some research studies that we're a part of. But how can we leverage the technology that we have on us each day, every day to monitor your movement in general and track your symptom management? So the reason why I like this is because up until now, how does your doctor look at your disease progression? You go in every 6 months, they pull you backwards, they make you rotate your hand, tap your fingers, tap your toes, and that's how they gauge disease severity. That's a pretty subjective assessment when we have these sensors that we have on us all day long. If you have any kind of activity tracker, whether that be a Garmin watch, an Apple Watch, a Fitbit, they have newer ones, which I love. They're called the Aura Ring and the Whoop. All of these are different trackers of activity that are pretty great. Here, I think there's someone trying to get in. Let me let them in. Uh-oh, I'm messing up my slides. So we can't improve what we don't measure. And so everyone that comes through in the top right corner there, some of you might recognize that screen. That is our gait analysis that we take all of our clients through on their initial assessment and every reassessment. It tracks what's your stride length on your right side versus your left side, how much time do you spend on your right leg versus your left leg, and how much variability there is from one step to the next. That's really important information for us to know. But guess what? If you have an Apple phone, your Apple phone is tracking that whenever it's in your pocket. Or if you have an Apple Watch, it's tracking a lot of those data metrics, even more than that treadmill does each and every day, which is, as far as I'm concerned, the most useful information that I can gather from our clients. I always tell everyone it's not about how you move when you're here with us. I mean, it is because we're going to be pushing you to move hard, but we want you to apply that good movement that you do in the gym to your everyday life. And so if we can track your ability to your gait stability, which is one of the measures that the Apple Health data will track, if we can improve that gait stability based upon a lot of different factors, we can improve your stride length each and every day and see some positive trends with that, that can make the world a difference in how we prescribe your exercise and how your doctor can help you manage your symptoms, your on and off periods, things of that nature. So some of you may have heard of this application before. It's called Strive PD. I've been actually in contact with them over the past few months. They've developed an application specifically for people with Parkinson's. It's 100% free. You have to have an Apple Watch. But what it does is they have some technology that they've developed. One, it collects all of the Apple data that you would be on your watch anyway. And it'll also pair that with some new algorithms that they have, which can track tremor intensity and dyskinesia intensity. I think there's still some bugs to work out with that. But the thing with all of these data points is that the thing that I like about the most is it's a consistent data point. If you wear your watch on the same wrist every single day, it's going to track your movement pattern on that wrist very consistently. And that's the type of data that can help give us, as your exercise professionals and health professionals, the best insight into your overall movement itself. It can help your doctors optimize your medication timing. If they have a significant drop off in your movement patterns, signaling an off period, well, maybe they can help you identify some different interventions to help minimize those off periods. So if you do have an Apple Watch, I'd highly recommend the Strive PD app. They have some they're doing a pilot trial right now with a hospital system out in California. That has been shown to, just by utilizing the application and getting some coaching, reduce healthcare costs quite significantly and reduced emergency care visits by like 40%, which is impressive. Simply by just tracking your activity and jumping on the phone with someone every month or so. So it's really interesting. It's a tool that I'd like to start utilizing here at Movement a little bit more often. But the other thing that this technology can do, and if any of you have an Apple Watch, when you're going into, if you've never seen any of these things before, you know your phone tracks your steps, but it can also track your sleep. It can also track, again, your stride length, your gait speed, 6-minute walk test, your VO2 max, which we didn't even get into today, which is a really important measure of cardiorespiratory fitness. It can give you some great data that can help you take more control over your health. And I think that's the best thing. I think a lot of times this technology is new. We're kind of freaked out, like, it's tracking everything. But the reality is, it's giving you the best window possible into how your body is moving. And given a change in something, given a change in your diet patterns, given a change in your exercise habits, given a change in your sleep, how does that affect your movement? And you can see it real time using these devices. So I'm happy to provide a link in the notes for that Christine is going to send out at the end of this presentation. But it can also track your sleep, which is one of the coolest things that I utilize this for. Is it can track if I wear my watch when I go to bed at night, it'll track your movement patterns throughout the night and it can give a really good estimation of how deep your sleep is, how much REM sleep you're getting, how much time you're awake, how much light sleep you're getting. And it allows you to get a score of like what your daily recovery is. As we know, daily stress, lack of sleep, exercise takes a toll on our bodies, and your Parkinsonian symptoms take a toll on your body. So your body's ability to recover is incredibly important. And if we can quantify that utilizing this technology, that's what we want to do. These are just some of the different devices that we've used before: the Apple Watch, the Oura Ring, the Whoop. Also, glucose monitors. There's some new, I just saw there should be an over-the-counter glucose monitor that's available without a prescription over this next year, but there is one called Levels, which is a part of a research study. Again, the importance of that is how well your body is utilizing and clearing the glucose that you take in through your diet. Your exercise affects that, and that significantly can affect your sleep as well. So, again, these are all just important things to stay on top of. Happy to answer any questions about it. This is my or our contact information at Movement, but I'd be happy to open up for questions. I can't believe I got through that in an hour, but I can stop talking.